This could be a hot take, but I don't think I'm super far off when I say that most of modern Megaten, including Persona, can be traced back to Shin Megami Tensei Nocturne. This game has served as the basis for the formula we know and love today, introducing a fully third-person camera, parties of 4, press turn, and combining pre-rendered cutscenes, skill inheritance, 3D demons, and other things from before. And the fact that it's the first to come out in the country with guns! Nocturne is such a gem that fans would not shut up about it for years, even after new games came out in the series, even to where new games in the series started to heavily base themselves off it. It's always been seen as the shining example of what a Shin Megami Tensei title should strive to be, and whether or not it actually is. When you think about how this game's legacy was met with its 2020 remaster, what the happened? Alright, for the beginning of this story, let us now transport to a lawless, isolated world. A world turned inside out with untimely demise waiting in every encounter. The internet in peak pandemic. It's July of 2020 and Nintendo announces a Nintendo Direct Mini Partner Showcase. Oh my god, there's more words in the title than announcements in the video. For those of you who weren't around for this, Nintendo fans were pretty desperate here. COVID had cast a shadow on future releases, and I think the community was looking for anything they could get. So even though Nintendo tries twice in the title to soften the expectations, and then once more in the description, people, holy moly, Cadence of Hyrule DLC. Wow, Rogue Company. Wow, WWE Chibi Battle Simulator. Do I need to tell you how people reacted to this direct? Obviously, they loved it. They went on Twitter and started blowing shit up, started disliking the video because they thought they were gonna see Splatoon 3. There it is, fuckers. Nowadays, when a partner direct gets announced, people know what to expect. They understand it's not going to have in-house content, but this one being the first, everyone had to learn, and they hated it. And as someone who is a Nintendo fan, I felt a little sad. I love this direct. Actually, it's the very first one I covered on my channel, simply because the next and final announcement, Shin Megami Tensei Nocturne.
Thank you, Shin Megami Tensei Nocturne.
Okay, listen. No, SMT for a lot of people is not that big of a one more announcement deal. And yes, this is the smallest country in the world. But Shin Megami Tensei Nocturne is a game that has been sealed away on the PS2 and PS3 PSN store PS Triple for nearly 20 years at this point. Endlessly praised by anyone who has played it, culturally embedded into the JRPG scene. To hear the intro theme in a Nintendo Direct, there will never be any way to describe how out of left field and exciting this was. And I guess the SMT5 release date was pretty nice too. Unfortunately, this didn't do much for general audience's approval rating of the Direct. I'm sure what they simply saw was Persona without the heart -2. All of a sudden, this game that had sat underrated and beloved within its own community now had all this negativity floating around it. Not because people didn't like it, not even because what we'll talk about in this video, but because it wasn't Mario Goes to Brazil. But I don't care about flaccid expectations, and I especially don't care when it comes to the near ritualistic post-Nintendo Direct bitchers. As a person who generally uploads Nintendo content, but is also way too attached to his Ameno Sagiri profile picture from like 2013, yes, 1,000 times yes, I will do it. I will take it upon myself to speak for both communities and explain why Nocturne is a work of art and why this announcement should have been huge. The year is 2003 and Atlus is cooking up something huge. Shin Megami Tensei on the Game Boy Advance, and 2. Look at this box art and tell me with confidence that this is not the hardest ever. Yes, the third entry makes sure to continue the tradition of amazing Kazuma Kaneko illustration, now viewable in cel-shaded 3D graphics for maximum pleasure. When I first came to play Nocturne, I went on GameFAQs and I asked, how's the story in this one? I had played a lot of Megaten to that point, and even the deeper cuts like Strange Journey and Raido 1 had thick narratives. I was into it. But the replies were like, that's not really a thing here, and little me said, no plot? How can the game be good if it doesn't have direct exposition or anime cutscenes and convoluted character relationships and kids yelling, Persona? Turns out I was way off. There's nothing ever contextualized in this game, and that's the best fucking part about it. At its core, you can view Nocturne as a game about a boy trying to find his humanity in a world where his friends are slowly losing theirs. The objective is simply to locate a teacher and survive. But deeper readings and interpretation is key, and it's ultimately what will help players decide their way into 6 different endings. To keep this choice in the player's court as much as possible, nothing ever feels outright stated in Nocturne. There's minimal cutscenes and explanations. The game does what it's able to move the plot forward and leaves the rest to you. And they give you a lot of time and space to think about it. SMT games are not your typical fantasy games. Really, they're not fantasy at all. Get the fuck out of here. Instead, we receive dark, science fiction, religious imagery, and softer horror themes. The setting has always been harsh, but it's also busy. There's tons happening, tons of NPCs, structured environment. And Atlus could have done all of this very well with 6th generation technology. In a way, they kinda did. But instead, Atlus used the PS2 and a limited budget to pull off something genius. What Nocturne makes especially sure to do is put you by yourself. That means no people, no context, barely even a tutorial. It's the first game in the series, it's still the only one actually, that does not give you any companion to help relay the silent protagonist to the world around them, because there is no world around them. Instead, you are partnered with quiet, cryptic, isolated, sometimes inducing atmosphere. Random encounters help the game to feel more lonely, perfectly combining with the ambient music. Direction is rarely given, company is even rare, and when you do come across others in the Vortex world, it does not provide a sense of security, but rather a vague hostility as you stare at familiar and twisted, uncanny surroundings. I think there is one human NPC encounter that is not one of the major characters. It happens in the first 3 minutes of the game. He's the only one. And then the world immediately ends. And then you're smack dab post-apocalypse with nobody. You have like 5 other surviving people who are trying to kill you, and then there's a bunch of demons who are trying to kill you. Also, we can't forget about Dante, who is trying to kill you. The mannequins are mostly peaceful NPCs that mean well. Nocturne is not a game for comedic relief, but if it's gonna happen with a mannequin. They can be nice and genuine and almost fit into the human shape they claim, but are synonymous with suffering and weakness, making it seem like such a recognizable human normalcy is to be punished in the Vortex world. And of course, the sudden twitches, not blinking and having their head cocked at like 35 degrees. For the longest time, I debated whether or not I should feel comfortable with the mannequins or on edge, and I think that's still an important question that every Nocturne player will have. As we discussed, it's all about choices in this game. The Souls might be even worse though, because that's just a bunch of dead motherfuckers who operate freely without awareness of their circumstance. It's very rare that an encounter will lift your spirits, and even when it does, it comes with a twist, which only become more intense as you continue in the game. Of course, the big bow on top of the atmosphere is the world at times is open, and you can go a lot of places, even places you aren't supposed to yet, and die to demons. Oh my god, you will die so much, so many times, death upon death, nothing but death in this busted ass game. Here's a great playlist by a Mr. Caleb Waller titled Nocturne Moments. Go ahead and give it a watch. Or maybe don't, because there's so much to love about Nocturne that watching these videos where you get insta-killed will only seem like an endearing personality trait of the game for people who have played it. Right, actually, so when I first played Nocturne in the year 2014, I had a bunch of my friends buzzing about another JRPG, given that Jay is in the room with us, that takes place in a similar, quiet, weird, and very unsurvivable world where you will die a lot at the hands of sometimes demons, with a plot that is to be read in between the lines. I am, of course, talking about Dark Souls. Yes, the craze finally hit upstate New York in 2014. We operate with a delay up here. Anyways, this is a comparison that has been made plenty of times, and I'm not here to reinforce that everything needs to be compared to Dark Souls stereotype. Oh my god, this is the Dark Souls of writing a Nocturne video. But what I will say is that Dark Souls is difficulty rooted in skill, and SMT is more so strategy. Some may see it as an acquired taste, and unfortunately, they are right. Nocturne requires psychological investment in order to fully learn its mechanics. For example, in press turn, if you need to both heal but can also hit a weakness, hit the weakness first and heal on the extra, duh. Hopefully you won't miss. If you feel like you will, cast a Secunda on that ass. Anticipate that your opponents will know your weakness and be built with crazy high stats. Get a pierce skill. Change your Magatama, your Magatma. Nocturne is, once again, not a game that will tell you any of this. You just have to experiment, watch enemies, and hopefully catch on. When it comes to negotiation, I don't know, man. That's... Yes, there is still some downright abysmal mechanics in Nocturne. Some would say it adds charm. Others would say the taste is getting less acquirable with age. I mean, at the end of the day, this is a PS2 game from 20 years ago. It could have been built better in its current position, but... In the near 2 decades in between the originals and the HD remaster, Atlus goes on to do a lot. They make another SMT game, people don't care, Nocturne is still the best. They make 2 more SMT games with numbers.
Don't care, don't care. Don't care, still don't care.
They create Digital Devil Saga and Devil Survivor. They give Devil Summoner a prequel action RPG and another. They get bought out by Sega. But they also make a game called Persona 3, the first game that will overtake Nocturne's leading place. At least that's what I got from shuffling around the sources on Video Game Sales Wiki. If I'm wrong, feel free to tell me in the comments, even though I'm not really referencing financial figures, or tell me why I should play Odin Sphere, which, as the fourth entry, did almost the exact same thing SMT's fourth entry, did for its series, taking a niche, higher barrier to entry RPG series and expanding it into new territory with wide appeal simulation elements like spending time with girls and shooting yourself. J-pop in high school, forget about all that spending hours in the dungeon stuff. Actually keep that in, but isolate it so people new to the series won't understand its roots and can complain about it. This must have been a great move because not 1 year later they release it again for cheaper and with more content. Persona 3 goes on to make Atlus millions, double the seeding for the upcoming Persona 4, and I don't even need to cover the popularity factor of Persona 5 after a decade of this series growing. But the cherry on top in this comparison is how much both of these games maintain their status as the top dog entry even after new games come out. Nocturne fans miss the minimalist, fully 3D environment with its non-Nintendo associated themes. They reject Strange Journey in 4. They can't be in a room with any derivative of the DS unless it's DDS. And Persona 3 fans make videos called Why Persona 3 Needs a Remake. Atlus eventually caves. They decide to bring back both in a grandiose way. Persona 3 is given a complete rebuild into the very modern looking... It's Persona 3 Reload, okay? And Shin Megami Tensei Nocturne, oh, let me tell you what Atlus did for its most praised SMT game. They took it and made it brighter? Wait, duh, of course, that's the demi-friend.
And finally, number 1 is the demi-friend from Shin Megami Tensei.
So what, is this video basically whining that Atlus didn't give SMT as much love as Persona? No, of course they didn't. Persona makes money. My argument here is that they didn't give Nocturne any love at all. It's their laziest port that completely misunderstands one of their best games. In that initial trailer, it was confirmed that Nocturne was being given an HD remaster, not a remake, a remaster, which is the first sign showing that Atlus didn't want to put any effort in. But that's fine, because expecting Atlus to want to remake a game like Nocturne is a little delulu in itself. We should be grateful they are wanting to revisit it at all, until it was also announced that said remaster would cost $50 USD. I played the PS2 version for $10 on PSN. It's still available there to this day. $40 extra is a lot of money, so let's see where it's going. Up to that point, Atlus also had a long run of re-releasing their games with what I'll call the Atlus re-release formula, typically featuring a new story arc, a new character, quality of life updates, voice acting, a lower price, and perhaps even a special edition. Of all of these things, Nocturne does not have a new story arc other than the one I'm telling you now. It does not have a new character. It in fact trades one out and then charges for them as DLC, even when it's somehow one of this game's biggest claims to fame. It does have quality of life updates, more on that in a second. It has voice acting, a lot more on that in a second. It, once again, costed $50, the same price as it did in 2004. And it did not have any sort of special or limited edition, at least not here in North America. But wait, because Nocturne lacking these things does not make their handling of the biggest SMT game at the time any more disappointing. They may have done more for Strange Journey Redux, which doesn't even have an English dub and censorship. Okay, buddy, but listen. Nocturne also features the same compressed music used in the original. Day 1 DLC on top of Dante, factually proving this game might be the HD remaster, but it ain't the definitive edition. And they kept the same old pre-rendered cutscenes, 3, 4, and then blurred the sides. I do that shit, and I'm a piss poor guy on YouTube who talks about Kirby 64, not a capable game studio. Plus, it just really looks like ass and completely kills the immersion whenever you see it switch over. So at the end of the day, that extra $40 comes down to widescreen, voice acting, and quality of life updates. And I'm not gonna lie, The quality of life updates are pretty nice. Suspending the game is convenient, merciful I don't agree with. I do think struggling is a big component of Nocturne, but I appreciate accessibility, and I have been playing on it so that I can quickly gather some more footage for this video. The ability to choose what skills are inherited. If you played any Mega 10 on the PS2, you understand what it was like to constantly yes, no, yes, no, yes, no. You understand why this is a beautiful feature that would have been more beautiful if it was included at launch instead of an update. That leaves us with the voice acting, which has always been a questionable addition. We already know Nocturne is a game to make people feel so much with so little, how it shines in its eeriness and how interpretation is vital for the player to attach. At no point in this game did I think voice acting was necessary, and I would go as far as to say characters like the mannequins and the woman benefit from not having a voice. So at the end of the day, it's up to you to determine if they are funny or creepy or friendly or evil. For the last time, it's a game about perspective. With voices, it's a lot easier to carve the characters into pre-existing archetypes and identify Chiaki as the bitchy, uptight friend and Isamu as the hottie with a body.
Damn. Even you couldn't pull through. I was counting on that demonic power of yours.
And then you got f***ing Fornius.
Hey, punk! I've never seen you around, and I don't like your face!
Dude, the mannequins talk like Pat Mahomes. The demons sound like they have voice mod turned on. Of course it doesn't fit. I'm not saying that voice acting could never work in Nocturne, but dubbing over a game with a script and cutscenes that weren't written with voice in mind is a lot easier in a game like Devil Survivor or Strange Journey. It's a budget approach to an enhanced port that doesn't work with Nocturne's 3D cutscenes and animations like...
Oh, wait. Is that you? Hey, you gotta help me. We don't have time to waste here. Your teacher, she's...
Yes, if you don't like the voices, you can turn it off. The voices also thankfully only occur in the big cutscenes because I think even Atlus recognized how much it would break immersion if every line from any NPC or demon had a voice with it. But then what is left with this version of the game should you decide to do that? You can hear the compressed audio better. And how about some day one glitches and stutters for our good friend the Nintendo Switch? I don't know, dude. I guess it just baffles me how Atlus can clearly see the love people have for this game, enough to bring back Demi Fiend several times after, heavily reference it in SMT5. I mean, I didn't even bring up that Atlus did 3 original versions on the PS2. So to then make such an underwhelming remaster, even if the intention was as simple as accessibility, getting to play the 2003 cult classic in a 2020s world, is the $50 price tag not counteractive? And let me be clear, I still think Nocturne HD is the best way to experience the game, especially now that it's around $15 used, but I think part of the reason this upsets me so much is that now that Nocturne HD exists, we'll never see a proper revisit to Nocturne and it given the effort for the sake of love rather than it given a Unity build for the sake of cashing in on a dedicated fan base. Or I guess maybe so that they could set the stage for SMT5 and put the idea in people's heads that SMT games only take place in the desert. Nocturne is such a unique game with so much to offer, but Nocturne HD is purely business, lifting that PS2 fog for a much clearer look at its JRPG skeletons, literally. And I don't only bring all this up out of obligation, I mean there was that, but years later, Shin Megami Tensei 4 is almost in the exact same position as Nocturne was previously, where 3DS fans are missing Tokyo Dome smirk antics and Snake Eater 3D. And modern fans who have played the ports of 3 and 5 or Vengeance are becoming curious about what the 3DS has held back from them. There is already alleged leaks coming from about a current gen port happening, but it doesn't take insider info to know that Atlus will inevitably arrive there. And I honestly don't trust them one bit going back to SMT4. The last few re-releases in this series have caught some flack. Vengeance was great, but it was handling source material from only 3 years prior. I'm sure there's lots more to be said about that in a different video. Even the Etrian Odyssey collection showed that Atlus doesn't always have the easiest time unifying 2 screens into one. I wouldn't say SMT4 totally needs a second screen, but it's not a game that you can just pop in the Unity microwave. At the same time, it's blasphemous to expect a complete reconstruction for 4, or maybe it isn't, I don't know. I will gladly pay $60 for anything with the name SMT4 on it, but I know Atlus is Atlus and they love to milk with minimal work. It's going to be a very tricky project, but let's bring it home with Shin Megami Tensei Nocturne. Nowadays, you can find Nocturne HD for between $10 and $20 used on either console. The original, I think, is about the same price too. Or you can go to Steam, where it's on sale pretty often, and that is what I would recommend most. If there is something that is proven time and time again after a company mishandles an IP, it is that the fans will have your back. Mods have done so much more for this game than Atlus ever did, including uncompressed audio, 60 FPS, someone even tried to widescreen the cutscenes, although I have no idea if this is a success or not. There are mods that tone down the enemy AI, which I also think is the bread and butter of Nocturne, but do you, sugar boo? But easily the most important mod is